The village of Umucha was a land of deep traditions, where warriors were respected, elders were honored, and families stood together through every hardship. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, and the strength of a man was measured not just by the battles he fought, but by the kindness he showed to his people. In the heart of this village lived Chuka, the kind of man every young boy wanted to grow up to be. He was tall, strong, and handsome, with a presence that commanded attention. His muscles rippled as he worked the farmlands, his dark skin glistened under the sun, and his smile could melt even the most stubborn hearts. But what truly set him apart was his heart. Chuka was not just a warrior in strength, he was a warrior of kindness. He spent his days helping anyone in need, whether it was an old woman struggling to carry firewood, a child who needed to climb a tree for mangoes, or a neighbor whose roof needed patching. Chuka was always there. The villagers loved him, and the young women adored him. But when he wasn't working, there was only one person he wanted to spend his time with: Adana. Adana was different from the other girls in Umucha. She wasn't just beautiful, she was bold, full of life, and always full of mischief. She had a spark in her eyes, the kind that made you want to listen to whatever she had to say, even if it was nonsense. She and Chuka had been friends since they were children. When others mocked her for being fatherless, Chuka stood by her. When she was sad, he made her laugh. When she fell, he picked her up. Together, they ran through the fields, climbed trees, played by the river, and shared their dreams beneath the shade of their favorite mango tree. "You will be a great warrior one day," Adana often told him, her small hands stretched toward the sky as if she could already see his future. "And you?" Chuka would ask, grinning. "I will leave this village and see the world," she would say, spinning in excitement. "Maybe I will even marry a prince." Chuka would laugh. "Then I will have to fight the prince to make sure he treats you well." They were just children, but everyone in the village could see their bond was special. Some believed they would grow up and get married, but Chuka and Adana never thought that far. They just enjoyed each other's company, not knowing what fate had in store for them. As Chuka grew older, he became the most admired young man in Umucha. The village girls whispered about him as he passed, giggling behind their hands. Mothers prayed their daughters would catch his eye, for he was not just strong, but hard-working and kind, a man who would make a good husband. But Chuka never seemed interested. Even though women tried to impress him, he was always either working or with Adana. His bond with her remained unshaken, even as they entered adulthood. One evening, Chuka sat under the mango tree, sharpening his machete. He wasn't alone. Adana sat across from him, plucking at the grass and eyeing him with amusement. "You know, Chuka," she began, tilting her head with a teasing smile, "if I had a cow for every woman who has tried to get your attention, I'd have a whole herd by now." Chuka smirked, not looking up from his machete. "And if I had a yam for every time you brought this up, I'd never go hungry." Adana burst into laughter, her eyes twinkling. "I don't understand you. The women practically throw themselves at you, and yet here you are, sitting under a tree like an old man. What exactly are you waiting for?" Chuka finally looked up, grinning. "I'm waiting for you to stop talking." She gasped dramatically. "Is that how you treat your only friend?" Chuka laughed, shaking his head. "I don't know, Adana. Maybe I just haven't met the right woman." Adana rolled her eyes. "Or maybe you enjoy watching them suffer, hoping and praying that you will finally look their way." She sat up straight and imitated the village girls, fluttering her eyelashes. "Oh, Chuka, look at how I pounded this fufu. I did it just for you." Chuka chuckled, shaking his head. "You're ridiculous." She grinned, leaning closer. "So tell me, is there really no woman in Umucha that you have your eyes on?" Chuka shrugged. "Not yet." Adana studied him for a moment. She knew Chuka better than anyone, and though he played it cool, she had a feeling that was about to change soon. Adana didn't have many friends. Other girls in the village kept their distance, perhaps because she had no father, perhaps because she never tried too hard to fit in. She didn't mind much. She had Chuka. But there was one thing even Chuka didn't know, something Adana had never told anyone. She had always believed her father was dead. That was what her mother had told her. But there were times, strange times, when Adana felt like there was something more. She would catch her mother staring at her when she thought she wasn't looking, eyes full of a sadness Adana didn't understand. But whenever she asked her mother about her father, she would always say the same thing. He was a good man. He passed before you were born. That was all. No details, no stories, no memories. And so Adana let it be. For now. Then one day Lotana arrived. She came from another village, walking into Umucha like a breeze that turned every head. Lotana was beautiful. Too beautiful. Her skin was smooth like palm oil, her smile soft yet mysterious. Her body moved with the grace of a dancer, and when she spoke, it was like honey dripping from her lips. The women whispered, "Who is she? Where did she come from? She must be a queen in her homeland." But it wasn't just the women who noticed her. The men did too. Chuka did too. For the first time, Chuka was captivated. He had never chased after a woman before. He had always been the one women tried to impress, the one they admired from afar. But Lotana was different. She wasn't like the other village girls who blushed and giggled when he passed. She wasn't like Adana, who teased and joked with him like they were equals. She was elegant, untouchable, and Chuka wanted her. So, for the first time in his life, he pursued. He brought her the sweetest fruits from the farm, fresh and ripe. He helped her fetch water, something no man of his status would normally do. He even carved her a beautiful wooden comb, presenting it to her beneath the moonlight. The village was in shock. The great Chuka is finally in love. Lotana is the luckiest woman in Umucha. She will be his wife for sure. Even Adana was surprised. After a few days, the village of Umucha was buzzing with excitement. Lotana, the most admired woman in the village, had agreed to marry Chuka. Women whispered about how lucky she was. Men sighed, knowing that the strongest and most eligible bachelor was now off the market. The elders nodded in approval. Chuka was not just a warrior, he was a good man, and he deserved a fine wife. But no one was more excited than Chuka himself. He had never felt this way before. Lotana was everything he had ever imagined a wife should be, graceful, beautiful, and admired by all. He wanted to shout his happiness to the world, but instead, he went straight to the one person who had been with him through everything. Adana. Chuka found Adana sitting by the river, her feet dipped in the cool water, tossing stones absent-mindedly. When she saw him, she smiled. "Here comes the great warrior," she teased. "What do I owe this royal visit?" Chuka grinned and sat beside her, nudging her shoulder. She said yes. Adana blinked. "Who said yes?" Chuka gave her a look. "Lotana." For a brief moment, Adana said nothing. Then she smiled brightly. "That's amazing, Chuka. You're finally getting married. I thought this day would never come." Chuka laughed. "Neither did I." He looked at the sky, exhaling in pure contentment. "I feel different, Adana. Like my life is about to truly begin." Adana nodded, though something inside her felt strange. She told herself it was just happiness for Chuka, nothing more. "Lotana is lucky," she said, squeezing his hand. Chuka grinned. "I think I'm the lucky one." Adana laughed, pushing him playfully. "You? Lucky? I think she has no idea what she's getting herself into." Chuka chuckled, shaking his head. "Jealous?" Adana rolled her eyes. "Oh, please." But that strange feeling inside her didn't go away. As the wedding approached, someone else in Umucha was not as lucky in love. Obinna. He was young, handsome, and well-respected, but his heart belonged to only one woman, Adana. The problem? Adana did not feel the same. For months, Obinna had tried everything to win her over. He brought her the sweetest and nicest things. He tried to impress her by winning wrestling matches in the village square. He even asked Chuka for advice, hoping her best friend would help him get through to her. "She just doesn't see me that way," Obinna complained to Chuka one evening. Chuka sighed, shaking his head. Adana is Adana. She's not like other women. She won't just fall for gifts and compliments, she is special. So what do I do? Obina asked. Chuka shrugged. Maybe she's just not meant to be yours. Obina frowned. That wasn't the answer he wanted. But what neither he nor Chuka knew was that Adana's heart was already too heavy to think about love. One night, as Adana sat outside her hut staring at the stars, her mother approached her, her face filled with anxiety. "We are leaving Umucha," she said suddenly. Adana froze, blinking in shock. "What?" "We leave at sunrise." Adana stood up. "Mama, what are you talking about? Why would we leave?" Her mother looked away, her hands trembling. I cannot explain now, but this time we must go." Adana's heart pounded. "But I don't want to go." Her mother grabbed her hands. "My child, I know this is hard, but I have no choice." Tears burned Adana's eyes. "What about Chuka? What about my life here? What about everything I know?" Her mother looked pained, but she simply pulled Adana into a hug. "You must trust me." But Adana didn't understand. She had spent her whole life in Umucha. It was the only home she had ever known. Why now? Why leave now, the night before Chuka's wedding? Something didn't feel right. As soon as her mother fell asleep, Adana ran. She ran straight to Chuka's hut, tears streaming down her face. When Chuka opened the door and saw her, his heart dropped. "Adana, what's wrong?" Adana could barely speak. "I'm leaving." Chuka's face darkened. "Leaving? What do you mean?" "My mother said we have to go. At sunrise." Chuka grabbed her arms, shaking his head. No, you can't leave, Adana." Tears spilled from her eyes. "I don't want to, Chuka, but I don't have a choice." Chuka's breath caught in his throat. He had never felt fear like this. Adana was his person. She was the one he told everything to, the one who knew his soul better than anyone. He couldn't lose her. "Then I'll talk to your mother," he said quickly. "No, Chuka," she interrupted, her voice breaking. "She won't change her mind." A tear fell down his cheek. "So what? You'll just disappear? Just like that?" Adana wiped her face, sniffling. "I don't know what else to do. I don't even know if I will ever come back." Chuka took a step closer, desperate. "Stay." Adana shook her head, crying harder. "I can't." They stared at each other, both feeling something they had never spoken aloud. Something unspoken, unacknowledged. Chuka pulled her into the tightest hug he had ever given anyone. They held each other, knowing this was goodbye. The sun had barely risen when 3 mysterious guards arrived at Adana's hut. They were tall, powerful-looking men, dressed in richly woven fabrics, different from anything the villagers of Umucha had seen before. Chuka stood at a distance, watching as Adana and her mother climbed onto a horse-drawn cart, their belongings packed tightly. His chest ached as she turned back one last time, her eyes locking with his. And then, she was gone, leaving Chuka to face his wedding day, with a hole in his heart. The dust on the village road had barely settled from Adana's departure, but life in Umucha continued. Chuka stood before the great elders, dressed in his finest woven garments. The sound of talking drums filled the air, and the village had gathered to witness his union with Lotana. The excitement was high, the jealousy was even higher. Every woman in Umucha had once hoped to catch Chuka's eye, but Lotana had won him. Some said she was the luckiest woman alive. Some whispered that Chuka had chosen well. But no one, not even Chuka, knew that this night would mark the beginning of his greatest suffering. The wedding feast was one of the grandest Umucha had ever seen. The finest palm wine flowed freely. The villagers danced, their voices rising in joyful songs. Lotana sat next to Chuka, her face glowing. She was beautiful, even more beautiful than on the day he first saw her. Chuka smiled at her. Soon the night deepened, and the villagers clapped and cheered as Chuka led his bride into their hut. "Tonight, the great warrior becomes a husband," someone called out, laughing. But no one knew what was about to happen. The hut was dimly lit by an oil lamp. Chuka turned to Lotana, his heart pounding, not with nerves but with anticipation. She smiled at him softly, but there was something in her eyes. Uncertainty. Still, she stepped closer, placing a hand on his chest. And then, just as the night was supposed to begin. Lotana's smile vanished. Her body tensed. And then she screamed. A scream so piercing, so filled with terror that the entire village heard it. Before Chuka could understand what was happening, Lotana bolted out of the hut, her wrapper barely holding onto her body. She ran through the village, shouting like a woman who had seen a spirit from the underworld.
"He's not normal. He is not normal,"
she cried. The villagers rushed out of their homes, stunned and confused. The same Lotana who had been the envy of every woman in the village, who had been so admired, was now running as if death itself had chased her from her husband's arms. Chuka stood at the entrance of the hut, his hands clenched into fists, his heart pounding with shame and disbelief. Lotana's family tried to calm her, but she would not stop crying. I cannot stay with him," she sobbed. That night, Lotana left the village, never to return. The women who had once envied Lotana gathered in small groups, their voices dripping with judgment. She was too weak, some said. She is not a real woman, others whispered. She should have been honored to be with a man like Chuka. But as time passed, the whispers began to change. Because Lotana was not the only one. At first, Chuka thought it had been Lotana's weakness. So he decided to move on. Another woman, Nena, stepped forward. She was bold and confident, declaring, "If Lotana could not handle his manhood, then I will." She entered Chuka's hut that night full of fire and determination. She left crying before the moon reached its peak. Then came Amaka, a woman known for her strength who had mocked Lotana's weakness. She ran away too. One by one, women came to prove their strength. One by one, they left in fear. Some were crying, some were silent and shaken. Some simply vanished from the village altogether, unwilling to speak of what they had experienced. The whispers grew louder. Something is wrong with Chuka. He is cursed. He is not like other men. No woman can handle his manhood. Mothers who had once dreamed of marrying their daughters to Chuka now kept them far away. The admiration that had once surrounded him turned into fear. The respect he had earned as a great warrior crumbled. The same women who once fought for his attention now avoided him. Chuka, once the pride of Umucha, was now an outcast in his own home. And for the first time in his life, he felt truly alone. The village of Umucha had not changed, but Chuka had. The women who had once whispered about his beauty and strength now crossed the street when he passed. He had become a ghost in the village he once ruled. No one said it to his face, but he could hear the whispers. He is cursed. Something follows him. No woman will ever stay with him. It didn't matter how much he worked, how much he helped the villagers, how much he pretended to be fine. Nothing could erase the shame that clung to him. At night, when the world was quiet, Chuka lay on his mat and stared at the ceiling. And every night, his thoughts drifted to Adana. She was the only person who had never looked at him with fear or expectation. She would have stood by him, laughed at the rumors, told him he was still Chuka, still the strong, kind-hearted boy she had grown up with. But she was gone. And for the first time in his life, he truly felt alone. Mama Chuka watched her son fade before her eyes. She saw the way he no longer smiled. She saw how he stopped meeting people's eyes. She saw how his shoulders, once proud, were now slumped. Her son, her only son, was becoming a shadow of himself. One morning, she made a decision. She grabbed Chuka by the hand and said, "Come, we are going to see Baba Ezenwa." Baba Ezenwa was feared and respected. His shrine was deep in the forest, far from the village, where the trees whispered secrets and the wind carried unseen voices. As they walked, Chuka felt a strange heaviness settle on his chest, as if something was watching him. Mama Chuka didn't stop. She marched forward, determined to find answers for her son. They reached the shrine, a small hut surrounded by white chalk markings, and found the old diviner seated before a crackling fire, his eyes closed. Without opening them, he spoke. "You have come for answers." Chuka's breath caught in his throat. Baba Ezenwa finally opened his clouded eyes and looked at him. "You should have come sooner." Baba Ezenwa took a deep breath and then spoke words that chilled Chuka's soul. "You are not alone, Chuka. You never have been." Chuka frowned. "What do you mean?" The diviner leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "You have a spirit wife." Mama Chuka gasped, covering her mouth. Chuka stared. "What?" Baba Ezenwa's voice was calm, but heavy. "From the moment you were born, she claimed you. She walks with you unseen, always watching, always waiting, and she has sworn that no mortal woman will ever take you from her." A cold shiver ran down Chuka's spine. He thought of Lotana, of Nenena, of all the women who had tried and failed. "That is why no woman can stay with you," Baba Ezenwa continued. "She will not allow it. She ensures that your manhood never enters any woman. She belongs to you, and you belong to her." Chuka's hands clenched into fists. "Then how do I get rid of her?" The old man shook his head slowly. "Spirit wives do not let go easily." Baba Ezenwa reached into a small leather pouch and pulled out a handful of white cowrie shells, scattering them onto the ground. For a long moment he studied their pattern. Then he sighed. "Your fate is sealed unless something extraordinary happens." Chuka felt anger rise in his chest. "So that's it? I must live my whole life like this, alone?" The diviner looked at him deeply as if searching his soul. "Your path is not yet clear, but know this, she is always watching, and she will never let you go willingly." Chuka felt the weight of those words crush him. For the first time he realized this was not a bad rumor. This was not a curse from jealous women. This was real. And now he knew he could never escape her. Meanwhile, the journey away from Umucha had been long, but Adana had barely spoken. She sat in the horse-drawn cart, staring at the trees as they passed, her heart heavy with confusion and sadness. Her mind kept returning to one thing: Chuka's face as she left, his pleading eyes, the way his hands had trembled when he held her, the way he had begged her to stay. She had never seen him like that before. And now she was gone, heading to a place she knew nothing about. The first thing she noticed was the walls. Unlike Umucha, which had small huts and open farmlands, this place was surrounded by towering walls made of red clay and stone. As the cart passed through the massive wooden gates, Adana's eyes widened. The village she had always called home was nothing compared to this kingdom. The market was enormous, filled with stalls of spices, fabrics, and jewelry. The people were dressed differently, their clothes finer, their accents richer. The palace stood like a mountain, its golden roofs shining in the afternoon sun. She had never seen such wealth in her life. Yet, she felt no comfort. She wanted answers, and soon she would get them. The palace was grand, but Adana barely noticed the details. Her hands felt cold, her stomach tight with nerves. The guards led her into a vast hall, where two figures stood at the far end, a tall, broad-shouldered man and a regal, graceful woman. The moment the woman saw her, tears filled her eyes. "My daughter," she whispered. Before Adana could react, the woman ran towards her and pulled her into a fierce, trembling embrace. Adana stood frozen as the woman, the queen, sobbed into her shoulder. "My daughter, my baby, I have searched for you for so long." The man, the king, placed a strong but gentle hand on her shoulder. His voice was deep, filled with emotion. "You are home now." Adana pulled back, her breath shaky. What are you talking about?" The queen wiped her tears and gently tucked Adana's hair behind her ear. And then with soft fingers she touched a small mark behind her ear. A mark Adana had never thought twice about. She gasped. The queen's eyes shone with certainty. "This is the birthmark of our bloodline. You are our daughter." Adana staggered back, shaking her head. "No," she whispered. "No, this can't be true." The king exhaled deeply, looking at her with sadness and guilt. "You were stolen from us, Adana. Stolen as a baby by a woman who worked in our palace." Adana froze. A woman who worked in the palace. A woman who had stolen a baby. The woman she called mother. Adana's heart raced. She felt like the walls were closing in on her, like she was suffocating. The memories flashed before her, the woman she had called mother, the woman who had raised her, the woman who had loved her. Had it all been a lie? She turned to the king, her voice shaking. Where is she? My mother, the one who raised me, the woman you say stole me. The king sighed. She is also here in the palace. Adana felt her chest tighten. The woman she had trusted her whole life. The only mother she had always known and loved. The woman who had promised to love her forever. Was she a kidnapper? Adana needed to see her. And she needed to hear the truth from her own lips. The palace corridors were cold and silent as Adana walked, her heart pounding against her ribs. 2 guards led her down a long, dimly lit passage, their heavy footsteps echoing around her. Adana's fingers trembled as she held onto the folds of her new clothes. Everything about this place, the rich fabrics, the polished floors, the towering walls, felt foreign. She should have felt at home, but all she felt was lost. She didn't care about the golden halls. She didn't care about the riches or the throne that was supposedly hers. All she cared about was the woman she had called mother. And she was about to face her. The guard stopped in front of a small, iron-barred cell. Adana's breath hitched as she saw Madame Adaku, the woman who had raised her, sitting on the cold stone floor. Her once proud posture was gone, her clothes were wrinkled, and her face, which had always looked strong, now looked defeated. Adana rushed forward, grabbing the bars. "Let her go," she pleaded with the guards. "She is not a criminal. She is my mother." The guards remained silent. Inside the cell, Madame Adaku slowly lifted her head, and when her tired eyes met Adana's, the truth was there before she even spoke. She was guilty, and she had been waiting for this moment. Tears stung Adana's eyes. "Tell them the truth, Mama. Tell them you didn't steal me. Tell them this is all a mistake." Madame Adaku's lips trembled, but she did not speak. Adana banged on the bars, her voice breaking. "Say something." Finally, Madame Adaku exhaled shakily. And then, she spoke the words that shattered Adana's heart. "It is true." Adana stiffened. "What?" "It is true," Madame Adaku repeated, her voice small. "I stole you." The words hung in the air like a curse. Adana staggered back, shaking her head. "No," she whispered. But Madame Adaku looked her in the eyes, and for the first time she told her everything. Madame Adaku began. "I was a servant in the palace, just a maid with no wealth, no family, no future. But I was in love with the king." Adana's heart pounded in disbelief. "I loved him so much," Madame Adaku continued, "but he did not even know I existed. Then one day the queen gave birth to you." She paused, her fingers gripping the edges of her dress. "When I saw you in her arms, I knew I would never have him. But I could have something of his." Adana gasped softly. Madame Adaku swallowed hard. "So I took you. I ran away in the night. I told myself that if I had you, a piece of him would always be with me." Adana felt her world shatter into 1,000 pieces. "I raised you as my own, and I loved you. I loved you more than life itself." Madame Adaku's voice cracked. "And I am sorry. I am so sorry." Tears streamed down Adana's frozen face. She wanted to scream. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to say that this wasn't real, but deep in her heart, she knew it was true. Adana stepped forward, gripping the bars again, her body shaking. "You call that love?" she whispered, her voice laced with pain. Madame Adaku looked at her, silence filling the space between them. Adana clenched her fists. "That was not love, Mama. That was obsession. You were obsessed with the king." Madame Adaku flinched. "You kept me away from my real parents. You lied to me my whole life. You didn't love me. You loved what I represented, not who I was." Madame Adaku's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Adana's breath shook violently as she took a step back. Her hands fell to her sides. Her heart felt too heavy to hold. She had spent her entire life believing in a lie, and now she had nothing left. Without another word, Adana turned and walked away. The guards led her back to her chambers, but she barely saw the hallways. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She couldn't stop crying.
When she reached her room, she collapsed onto the floor, sobbing so hard her chest ached. She had lost the mother she had always known and trusted. She had lost the home she had known. She had lost Chuka. Now she was a princess of a land she didn't know, but she had never felt more alone. Meanwhile, back at the village of Umucha, which had once been a place of joy and purpose for Chuka, but now it was nothing but a prison. Wherever he walked, he felt the weight of whispers on his back. Wherever he looked, he saw pity, fear, and distance. He was no longer the most wanted and desired man. He was now a shadow. He was a man with a spirit wife with no way to break free from her. One evening, as Chuka sat outside his hut, staring into the endless sky, he made a decision. He could not keep living as a shadow of himself. He could not keep waiting for a miracle that would never come. If the answers weren't in Umucha, then maybe they were somewhere else. Far away, in a land beyond the rivers and hills, was Achi, a kingdom known for its strong warriors and great riches. Chuka had a cousin there, a warrior named Ekene, who had always invited him to visit. "Come, my brother," Ekene had said many times. "There is opportunity here. There is a new life waiting for you." Chuka had never considered it before. Umucha had always been his home. His family was here. His life was here. But what life did he have left now? Adana was gone. His place in the village was gone. Maybe it was time to leave too. When Chuka told his parents, his father nodded solemnly. But his mother, she fought back tears. "My son," she said, her voice breaking, "do you truly wish to leave us?" Chuka took her hands, his heart heavy with guilt. "Mama," he said softly, "there is nothing left for me here." She squeezed his hands tightly. "But the world beyond Umucha is dangerous. You do not know what awaits you." Chuka swallowed hard. "I know, but I cannot keep living like this." His mother's lips trembled, but deep down, she knew. He had already made up his mind. A part of her wanted to beg him to stay, but another part knew. Maybe this was for the best. Maybe his answers were out there. Maybe his destiny was waiting beyond the hills. Finally, with a deep sigh, she cupped his face. "If you must go, then go as the strong warrior that you are. Do not let this world break you." Chuka nodded. "I will make you proud, Mama." And with that, she wrapped her arms around him, holding him tightly, as if trying to hold on to her son for just a moment longer. The next morning, before the first light touched the earth, Chuka packed a small bag and prepared his journey into the unknown. He walked to the village gates, taking one last look at the place he had always called home. He thought of the fields he had worked in, the river where he had played as a boy, the mango tree where he had laughed with Adana, a life that now felt like it belonged to someone else. Then, without another word, he turned away, and he walked, away from the only home he had ever known, away from the whispers. Little did he know, he was walking straight into another phase of his life, a phase that would bring him face to face with someone he never expected to see again. The road to Achike was long and filled with dusty paths and endless hills, but Chuka didn't care. For the first time in a long time, he felt free. No whispers followed him here. No women ran from his touch. No one looked at him with fear and judgment. Here, he was just a traveler, a man searching for a new beginning. When he finally arrived at the gates of Akike, the difference between this kingdom and Umucha was immediately clear. The walls were taller. The marketplace was livelier. The people moved with purpose, their laughter ringing in the air. Chuka took it all in, letting the fresh air fill his lungs. Maybe this was where his true life would begin. Waiting for him at the entrance was Ekene, his cousin and longtime friend. "Chuka!" Ekene's voice boomed as he clapped a hand on Chuka's shoulder. "You finally listened to me!" Chuka chuckled, shaking his head. "I had no choice, my brother. Umucha no longer feels like home. Ekene studied him for a moment, seeing the weight in his eyes, the exhaustion in his soul. Well, you are here now, Ekene said, his smile wide. And this place? This is a land of opportunity. You will rebuild yourself here. And with that, Chuka stepped into his new life. Within weeks of settling in Achike, Chuka had already become a man of admiration. His strength and work ethic made him stand out in the warrior circles. His kindness made him loved by the common people. His charm caught the eyes of women, though this time he did not chase after them. It felt good to be himself again, to not live under a curse, to not live under the shame of rejection, but deep inside, a hollow feeling remained. At night, when the world grew quiet, he found himself thinking of Adana. Where was she now? Was she safe? Had she found a new life too? Little did he know, she was closer than he could have ever imagined. While Chuka was rediscovering himself in Achike, Adana was losing herself in a world she did not belong to. She was a princess now. Her clothes were finer than she had ever imagined. Her food was prepared by the best cooks in the kingdom. Her bed was softer than the clouds in the sky. And yet, she had never felt more trapped. The golden walls of the palace felt like a cage. The maids and guards bowed before her, but she could see it in their eyes. She was a stranger to them. Even her own parents, the king and queen, though kind and loving, were still just strangers to her. She had spent her whole life in Umucha. She did not know the ways of royalty. She wanted her old life back, or at least her old friend. Every evening, when the sun began to set, Adana would slip away from the palace walls, wandering the outskirts of the city. She would watch the common people laugh, work, and live their simple lives. She envied them. How she wished she could walk freely, without guards following her. How she wished she could sit by the river again, under the mango tree. How she wished Chuka was here. But he was gone, and she was alone, until fate decided otherwise. One evening, as Adana wandered through the quiet pathways outside the palace, she passed a small training ground where young warriors were sparring with wooden staffs. It wasn't the warriors that caught her attention. It was him. The moment her eyes landed on him, her entire body froze. The broad shoulders, the deep brown skin, the strong hands that once pulled her up when she fell as a child. The face she thought she would never see again. Chuka. Her heart stopped beating for just a moment. It couldn't be. It couldn't. But then, he turned. Their eyes met. And suddenly, the world faded away. Time stood still. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Adana couldn't breathe. Chuka couldn't think. They just stared at each other, unable to process what was happening. For a long moment, Adana and Chuka just stared at each other, as if the universe had paused just for them. Then, without thinking, Adana ran to him. Her feet barely touched the ground as she threw herself into his strong, familiar arms. Chuka caught her instantly, his grip tight, firm, and full of emotion. She buried her face in his chest, her body trembling with joy and disbelief. "Chuka," she whispered, her voice breaking. Chuka exhaled shakily, his hands holding onto her as though he would never let go again. "Adana," he murmured into her hair. "Is this real?" She pulled back slightly, just enough to look into his eyes. "I'm here," she whispered, smiling through her tear-filled eyes. Chuka cupped her face, studying her, as if afraid she would disappear again. And then, as though pulled by an invisible force, they both smiled. A deep, knowing smile that only two souls destined for each other could share. Chuka led Adana away from the busy training ground, away from the curious eyes of onlookers. They found a quiet place, a secluded garden behind one of the training huts, where the stars shone above them, glowing like silent witnesses. They sat beneath a tree, side by side, their hands occasionally brushing, their eyes stealing glances at each other. "So," Chuka said, breaking the comfortable silence, "tell me, what have you been up to? Where did you go after you left Umucha?" Adana's smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly replaced it with a small laugh. "Oh, you know,"
just trying to find my place in the world," she said vaguely, choosing not to reveal the truth about her identity just yet. Chuka nodded, accepting her answer without pressing. "What about you?" she asked, tilting her head. "Did you come here with your wife?" Chuka sighed, rubbing the back of his neck.
"It didn't work out," he admitted, his voice calm. "We weren't compatible." Adana looked at him, searching his face for pain. But there was none. Instead, there was acceptance. A man who had made peace with his past. "I see," she said softly, not asking further, sensing that he did not want to explain more. And just like that, the past was left behind. Tonight was not about pain, not about regrets, not about unanswered questions. Tonight was about them, two souls reunited, and the love that never truly left. As they sat there, the space between them grew smaller. Their eyes met and held, deep, longing, searching. Something invisible yet undeniable pulled them toward each other. Chuka reached out, tracing his fingers along her jawline. His touch, feather-light. "Adana," he whispered, as if speaking her name was enough to bring him back to life. She leaned into his touch, her breath unsteady, her heart pounding. And then, as though the universe had planned this moment for eternity, their lips met. Soft at first, then with an intensity that shook them both. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a reunion of souls. A deep, desperate embrace of two people who had longed for each other, who had searched the world for something they had already found in each other. That night, beneath the stars, beneath the whispering trees, they became one. Chuka, who had spent his life being feared and rejected by women, found himself completely at ease with Adana. There was no fear, no hesitation, no barrier. Everything felt natural, effortless, right. His touch ignited no screams of terror, only soft moans of pleasure. His embrace did not send her running away, but instead, pulling him closer. It was as if their bodies had always been meant for each other. And in that moment, the so-called curse that had followed Chuka all his life vanished. Because true love was not about size or strength or fear. It was about understanding, compatibility, and connection. And with Adana, Chuka had found all of that and more. As dawn broke over Achike, Adana lay beside Chuka, her fingers tracing small circles on his chest. He held her close, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, a deep, satisfied peace settling in his heart. For the first time in a long time, he felt whole again. Neither of them spoke, because there were no words needed. They had been lost. They had been separated. They had been tested by fate. But love had brought them back together. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. No fear, no shame, no whispers haunting him. Just her. The woman who had always understood him. The woman who had always been by his side. And yet, something still lingered inside him, a truth he had yet to say aloud. And if he truly wanted to be free, if he truly wanted to begin again, then Adana deserved to know everything. When Adana finally stirred, she turned to him, smiling sleepily. "Good morning," she whispered, her voice soft and warm. Chuka took a deep breath, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Adana, there's something I need to tell you." She frowned slightly, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What is it?" she asked, sitting up. Chuka hesitated for a moment, then finally spoke the words he had never fully admitted to anyone. "It wasn't only my marriage that ended because of lack of compatibility," he said, his voice heavy. "It ended because every woman I tried to be with ran away from me." Adana's eyes widened, confusion crossing her face. "What do you mean?" Chuka clenched his fists, staring at the ceiling. "I mean, no woman could take my manhood. They would scream in fear and run before anything even happened." Adana's eyes widened in shock. He turned back to her. "At first I thought it was just bad luck. But then it happened again, and again. And soon, the whole village started talking. Adana swallowed hard, suddenly understanding the weight of what he had carried. She reached for his hand, but he wasn't done. And then, there was the spirit wife. Adana froze. What? Chuka exhaled deeply. After my failed marriage, my mother took me to a powerful diviner, Baba Izenwa. He told me that I was claimed by a spirit wife, a supernatural being who ensured that no mortal woman would ever have me. Adana stared at him, her mind spinning. The spirit wife? She echoed, trying to process it. Chuka nodded. She was always watching, always waiting. And the worst part? The diviner said I could never be free. A heavy silence hung between them. Then Chuka's eyes met hers, a realization settling over him. But Adana, he whispered, with you, it was different. She blinked. What do you mean? Chuka took her hands, his grip firm, certain. You didn't run, he said. You didn't scream. You didn't feel fear. He cupped her face, searching her eyes. Don't you see, he said, his voice full of emotion. Maybe I was never cursed. Maybe I just needed the right woman. Adana's heart was beating fast as she listened to his words. He had bared his soul to her. He had told her his greatest shame. He had given her all of himself. And now it was her turn. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around his. Chuka, she began softly. There's something I haven't told you either. Chuka frowned slightly. What is it? Adana licked her lips, her heart racing. The day I left Umucha, it wasn't just because my mother wanted to move. Chuka stared at her, his breath stilling. She swallowed. I was taken, because I am the lost princess of Achi. For a moment, Chuka did not move. His mind struggled to process the words. Then, he let out a sharp breath, his eyes widening. What? Adana nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. The person I thought was my mother. She wasn't. I was stolen at birth by the woman who raised me. My real parents are the king and queen of Achi. Chuka felt his entire world shift. Adana. His Adana. A princess. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. So, you've been living in the palace this whole time? He asked. She nodded. Chuka let out a low, disbelieving chuckle, shaking his head. This is unreal. Adana bit her lip, worried. Does this change anything? Chuka looked at her, his eyes serious and full of emotion. You mean, does it change the fact that I love you? He asked. She felt her heart skip a beat. No, he said firmly, it doesn't. Adana let out a shaky laugh, tears slipping down her cheeks. You don't care, she whispered. Chuka smiled, pulling her into his arms. I don't care if you're a princess, Adana, he murmured. I don't care if you live in a palace or a hut. I love you. I have always loved you. I thought I was in love with Lotana, but I wasn't. I was just attracted to her. I realized I love you after you left Umucha. Adana buried her face in his chest, her heart bursting with happiness. She had feared this moment, feared that the truth would separate them again. But now she knew. They had already lost each other once, and they would never lose each other again. The day Chuka stood before the king and queen of Achi, he felt more nervous than he had ever been in his life. He had fought battles. He had faced rejection. He had wandered into the unknown. But nothing compared to this moment, standing before the parents of the woman he loved, asking for their blessing. The great king Obianuju sat on his high throne, his deep eyes studying Chuka with unreadable emotion. Beside him, Queen Ifunanya watched with soft curiosity. Adana stood next to Chuka, her fingers brushing against his, offering silent reassurance. Then, after a long pause, the king finally spoke. You are the man who has captured my daughter's heart. Chuka bowed deeply, his voice steady but full of respect. Yes, my king. The king's gaze lingered for a moment before a slow, approving smile crossed his face. Then you are welcome into our family, my son. The queen stood up, stepping forward and taking Chuka's hands in hers. She has chosen you, she said warmly, and we honor her choice. You are now one of us. Chuka felt his chest tighten with emotion. He had spent years feeling unworthy, unwanted, outcast. But now he was accepted. News of the wedding of the lost but found Princess of Achi, Princess Adana, and Chuka's wedding spread across Achi like wildfire. The streets were filled with joy and anticipation as preparations were made. The palace shone with golden decorations, and the entire kingdom prepared for a celebration like no other. But before the wedding, Adana had one final request. She went to her parents, her voice soft but firm. "I want Adaku to be released from prison." The king and queen exchanged glances. "She stole you from us, Adana," the queen said gently. "Are you certain?" Adana nodded, tears in her eyes. "She raised me. She made me who I am. And no matter what she did, I cannot turn my back on the woman who gave me love all those years." The king sighed, but his daughter's kindness could not be denied. With a simple nod, he gave the order. And so, Adaku was freed. When she was brought before Adana, the older woman fell to her knees, tears running down her face. "My child," she whispered, "I do not deserve your forgiveness." Adana knelt down too, taking her hands. "You were wrong to take me," she said softly. "But I know you loved me, and I loved you too." Adaku sobbed, holding on to Adana as if she would break from the weight of her guilt and gratitude. For the first time, Adana was truly free, not just from her past, but from the burden of resentment. Back in Umucha, when the news of Chuka's wedding to the princess of Akike reached the village, the people were stunned. The same Chuka, the man we thought was cursed, the one we abandoned? It didn't take long before shock turned to celebration. They realized Chuka had never been cursed. He had simply been waiting for the right woman. The village erupted in joy, singing praises of their once rejected son. Elders spoke of his journey, using it as a lesson for young men and women. Patience and true love conquer all. When the time is right, everything will fall into place. On the day of the wedding, Chuka stood at the palace gates, dressed in royal robes, his heart beating fast. When Adana appeared, walking toward him in a golden wrapper woven with the finest silk, Chuka forgot how to breathe. She was stunning. She was radiant. She was his. As they exchanged vows beneath the golden sky, Chuka realized something. All the pain, all the suffering, all the whispers and loneliness, it had all been leading him here. To her. And when he kissed his bride, the entire kingdom rose in thunderous applause, knowing they were witnessing a love that was meant to be. Years passed. Chuka and Adana ruled Achike together, their reign filled with love, wisdom, and fairness. Chuka was no longer just a warrior, just a man searching for his place. He was now a prince, a leader, a husband, a father. Yes, a father. Their love blossomed into a beautiful family, filling the palace with laughter, joy, and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. The story of Prince Chuka and Princess Adana became legendary, told across lands far and wide. And whenever young men and women struggled with love, the elders of Umucha and Akike would tell them the story of the warrior who thought he was cursed, but was really just waiting for the right woman. Because in the end, true love is about understanding, patience, and destiny. And when the time is right, everything will fall into place.